I wake up at 5:30 in the morning, not because I have to go to work. That stage of my life is long gone. It's just that my body remembers the schedule of the sawmill where I've worked for almost 4 decades. My joints habitually ache as I put my feet down on the cool wooden floor. At 65, the body isn't what it was when I was young. My house and mountain home isn't big 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room, and an attached workshop. But it's as sturdy as I am. I built it with my own hands back in '79 when Martha and I were first married. Every beam, every plank here holds a story. Back then, timber cost pennies, and I worked at a sawmill and could get wood at a discount. The house is quiet, too quiet. Martha was gone 3 years ago. Cancer took her quickly and ruthlessly. Sometimes I still listen, out of habit, to hear her rattling dishes in the kitchen, humming her old songs. For the first year after she died, I talked to her, telling her about my day, asking for advice. Then it started to go away. I wouldn't say it got easier, just got used to the emptiness. I go down to the kitchen and put on the coffee pot. I drink my coffee strong, no sugar, so strong that it's spoonable. Martha had always grumbled that such coffee would give me an ulcer, but in 40 years her prediction had never come true. I'm making a simple breakfast of scrambled eggs and bacon. I never could cook much. That was Martha's territory. Now I have to do it on my own. I walk out onto the back porch with a cup of coffee. It overlooks the valley where Mountain Home, a small town tucked between the mountains, spreads out. From here on my hill, I can see almost the whole town, the main street with the stores, the church, the school where Gareth used to go to school. 15 minutes by car to the center, but here, on the outskirts, it's quiet and peaceful. Only the pine trees and the birds are singing. It's the end of August, the most fertile time in the mountains. The days are still warm, but not hot. The nights are cool, and the air smells of pine needles and ripe apples. In the orchard behind the house are 6 apple trees that Martha and I planted 30 years ago. We'll need to harvest soon. Gareth used to help me with that, but in recent years he always finds a reason not to come. Gareth is my only son, 42 years old, marketing guy for some company in the city, married to Meredith for 12 years. They don't have any kids, they're still working on their careers. Meredith works at a law firm as some kind of paralegal. Smart, beautiful, ambitious, and not at all like the women I'm used to dealing with. My relationship with Gareth. Complicated. Not that it's bad, just not what I thought it would be. When he was little, we were close. I took him fishing, taught him woodworking, told him stories about the sawmill. He'd look at me wide-eyed. I was his hero. And then he went to college, the first in our family, and everything changed. College, the city, new friends, Meredith. It was like he moved into a different world, a world where people like me, with calloused hands and an 8th-grade education, were not welcome. He never said it outright, but I could feel it. Saw the way he wrinkles his nose when I use some simple expression. How Meredith smiles apologetically when I tell stories from my life. How he tries to cut our meetings short. I finish my coffee and go to the workshop. It's my little paradise. The machines, the tools, the smell of fresh shavings. After I retired, I started carving wooden figures. Birds, animals, sometimes faces. Nothing special, just to keep my hands busy. Martha said I had talent, but she always exaggerated my abilities. Today I'm working on an eagle. Wood is a stubborn material, but that's its beauty. It resists, but if you know its character, you can make it take any shape. I work for hours, fully immersed in the process. Here, among shavings and sawdust, I feel in my element. There are no complexities of modern life, no strained smiles and awkward pauses. It's just me, the wood, and the tools. At 10:30, the phone rings. I wipe my hands clean of dust and stare at the screen. Gareth. Strange, he usually calls on Sundays. Hi, I answer, trying to hide my surprise. Hi, Dad. Gareth's voice sounds a little strained. How are you? I'm okay. Why are you calling on a weekday? Something wrong? He laughs, but it's not natural. No, nothing's wrong. I just wanted to see how you're doing. I'm not saying anything. We both know he never calls for no reason. He's usually after something. Okay, he gives up. There is one thing. Remember when I said Meredith's parents were coming up this weekend? I do. Meredith's parents are Quentin and Vanessa Northup. He's an economics professor at some prestigious university. She's a society lady, as Martha said. I saw them twice, at the wedding and at Martha's funeral. Both times they looked at me like I was some kind of exhibit in a museum. Curious, but a little dirty. Anyway, they're really coming, Gareth continues. Friday. And we wanted to have a family dinner on Saturday night. I see, I say. And you want me to come? A pause, too long. Actually, Dad, we wanted to invite you, but there was a problem with the restaurant. We were planning to have dinner at Mountain Lake. It's a new place downtown, very nice. But they mixed up the reservation, and we were turned down for Saturday. I see, I replied. So dinner is canceled? Yes, I'm sorry. Maybe another time when they come again. I nod, even though he can't see it. Somehow I'm not surprised. Every time Meredith's parents come over, there's some reason I can't meet them. They're busy, or they're not feeling well, or something. Where are they staying? I ask. Maybe I could at least stop by and say hello. The Pine View, Gareth answers quickly. But they're on a very tight schedule, Dad. They're only coming for 2 days, and Meredith wants to show them around the city, take them shopping. You know how it is. I do, I say, when I really don't. My late mother-in-law, Marta's mother, always stayed with us when she came to visit, and we always made time for family lunches and dinners, despite our busy schedules. And another thing, Dad. Gareth's voice is getting quieter. We're a little short on our mortgage payment this month. Could you lend me $1,000? I'll pay you back as soon as I get my bonus. That's it. The real reason for the call. I look at my hands, calloused with stains, scars from countless cuts and burns. Hands that have worked a lifetime so that my son could get the education I didn't have, so that he could have a better life than I had. And now he only needs those hands when they're holding a checkbook. $1,000, I repeat. Like the $2,000 for car repairs last month? Dad, you know times are tough right now. The market's unstable. The agency's cutting budgets. I'll transfer it today, I interrupt him. There's no point in arguing. I always give him money when he asks for it. Since Martha died, it's the only way I can see my son regularly. He calls when he needs money, and I pretend I don't understand it. It's a pathetic semblance of a family relationship. But what else do I have left? Thanks, Dad. You're the best. I'll pay you back, I promise. We talk some more about his job, about how Meredith got a promotion, about what they're thinking about buying a second car. Not a word about when they plan on coming to visit me. Not a hint of inviting me over to their house for a casual dinner without the Mountain Lake glamour. After the conversation, I go back to work on the eagle figure, but my thoughts are somewhere far away. I think back to when Garrett was a boy, how I taught him to fish, making birdhouses together, how I used to read to him at bedtime, running my finger over the lines, even though I wasn't very good at reading. Martha was more educated than I was. She'd graduated from high school and even spent a year at community college. She helped Gareth with his lessons, and I taught him practical skills. Gareth was a smart boy, grasping everything on the fly, asking questions I often couldn't answer. Our son will go far, Martha said, and I believed her. And he has indeed gone far, so far that there is now a gap between us. He lives in a world of offices and computers and business lunches, a world where it matters what tie you wear and what restaurant you dine at, a world where people like me don't belong. Maybe it's not about worlds. Maybe it's just that my son is ashamed of me, ashamed of my rough manners, my plain language, my old clothes. Maybe that's why he doesn't want me to meet Meredith's parents. At noon, I take a break and go into the kitchen. I make a ham and cheese sandwich, open a bottle of beer. Martha didn't approve of beer in the middle of the day, but Martha is gone, and I've earned this little weakness. After lunch, I decide to drive into town for groceries. My old pickup, a '97 Ford, is still running, though it needs constant attention. I could buy a new car. I have money, a good pension, plus savings. But why? This car, like a house, holds memories. On the back seat is still a plaid, which Martha used to cover my knees in the cold days. In town, I stop at the Johnson's supermarket. I take only the essentials: bread, milk, eggs, some meat. I'm a simple cook. I don't like fancy things. At the checkout counter, I meet Dwight Farley, my neighbor, who lives across the street from me. "Irwin!" he exclaims as if he hasn't seen me in forever, even though we spoke only yesterday. "How are you?" All right, I answered briefly. Dwight's a big talker. If you let him, he'll talk for hours. Did you hear your boyfriend's in-laws are coming to visit? He asks as he helps me put my groceries in a bag. How do you know? I wonder. Dwight winks. It's a small town, Irwin. Everybody knows everything here. I saw your Gareth at the flower store yesterday. Ordered a bouquet for his mother-in-law, I understand. I nod, not knowing what to say. So Gareth's getting ready for Meredith's parents, ordering flowers, booking restaurants, and making up reasons why I can't meet them. It's good that they're finally coming, Dwight continued. How many years has it been since you've been married? 10? 12? 12, I answered. And this is only the second time they've come. They don't visit their daughter very often. They have their own things to do, I say, defending people I hardly know. They're busy people, Dwight snorts. Busy? Too busy to visit their own daughter? I don't believe it. I'm not answering that. There's no point in arguing with Dwight. He always knows best. Well, say hi when you see them, he said, patting me on the shoulder. I will, I said, knowing that I wasn't likely to see Meredith's parents this visit. Nor will I see Meredith's parents on this visit. When I got home, I sorted through my shopping and went back to the workshop. The work on the eagle figure is progressing slowly. The wood is hard and the details are fine. But there is no hurry. I have a lot of time now. Too much. In the evening, I sit down at my computer, a marvel of technology that Martha made me buy a year before she died. You need to keep up with the times, Irwin, she used to say. I've learned how to use email, look at the news, even pay bills online. But the computer still feels foreign to me in a house full of old, familiar things. I log into my bank account and transfer $1,000 to Gareth's account. It's not the first time, and I'm sure it won't be the last. I've given him about $15,000 over the past year. For car repairs, for new furniture, for health insurance, for a down payment on a house. Every time he promises to pay me back, and every time he forgets. And I don't remind him because I'm afraid he'll stop calling altogether. After the transfer, I text him, I sent the money. Call me when you get it. The reply comes almost instantly. Thanks, Dad. You're the best. I'll be sure to pay you back as soon as I get my bonus. I put the phone away and look out the window. The sun is already setting behind the mountains, coloring the sky orange and pink. These were the sunsets Martha loved the most. We often sat on the back porch holding hands and watched the day give way to night. Irwin, she used to say, nothing is more important than family. No matter what happens, family is what stays with you until the end. I believed her then. I believe her now. Except my family doesn't really seem to want to stay with me. I make myself a simple dinner of fried chicken and potatoes. Martha cooked better, but I'm trying. After dinner, I go into the living room, sit in my chair by the fireplace, and turn on the television. They're showing some old Western. I watch it, not really paying attention to the story. My thoughts keep going back to Gareth, to our conversation, to the canceled dinner. Something's bothering me, a vague suspicion. Why was he so insistent that Meredith's parents would be too busy to see me? Why did he say the restaurant canceled the reservation? The phone rings, interrupting my musings. It's Lloyd Prescott, my old friend who we worked together at the sawmill until he left to join the IRS 20 years ago. Irwin! His voice sounds as rough and straightforward as he is. How are you, you old stump? Can't complain, I reply. What happened? Why is something wrong? Just calling a friend for a chat. At 10 o'clock at night? You never call just to chat. Lloyd's laughing. Okay, you got me. Listen, you want to go out on the town this weekend? Saturday night, old pine. We'll have a couple drinks, reminisce about our youth. Saturday. I remember talking to Gareth. Dinner with Meredith's parents was canceled, so I'm free. Yeah, I guess I could do that. That's great. By the way, have you heard about this new restaurant, Mountain Lake? They say it's crazy expensive, but the food is worth it. I haven't, I said, but Gareth mentioned it today. Does your son go there? Lloyd sounded surprised. He's pretty well off if he can afford places like that. I wince. Lloyd has always been blunt to the point of rudeness. He has a good job, I say, defending my son. He's earned his successes. Of course he does, I hear skepticism in Lloyd's voice. How often does he visit you? Or does he only call when he needs money? I don't answer, and Lloyd sighs. I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to upset you. It's just, you deserve to be treated better, that's all. All right, well, I'll see you Saturday. And don't be late. First drink's on me. We say goodbye and I put my phone away. Lloyd's words hit a nerve, but deep down I know he's right. Gareth visits me less and less often, and almost always those visits end with me asking for money. I turn off the TV and go upstairs. Martha's things are still in the bedroom, her nightstand of books, her chair by the window, her clothes in the closet. I couldn't bring myself to get rid of them. Sometimes I think she's about to walk into the room, smile, and ask why I'm so glum. I go to bed, but I can't sleep. My thoughts revolve around the conversation I had with Gareth today. Something doesn't add up. Why was he so insistent on canceling dinner? Why didn't he want me to meet Meredith's parents? And then it hits me. What if the dinner wasn't canceled? What if Gareth just doesn't want me there? What if the whole mixed-up reservation thing is just a fabrication? The thought echoes painfully in my chest. Is my own son so ashamed of me that he's willing to lie to keep me out of the family dinner? Am I so inappropriate that I can't be shown to decent relatives? I lie in the dark, staring up at the ceiling, and I can feel the bitterness building up inside. Not because I wasn't invited to some dinner, after all. I'm not a big fan of such events. It's because of the lies, because my own son sees fit to deceive me, and because of the fact that he does it probably right before he asked me for money. Sleep doesn't come for a long time. When I finally fall asleep, I dream of Martha. She's standing in our garden among the apple trees, looking at me sadly. "Erwin," she says, "our boy is lost. He has forgotten who he is and where he came from." "What shall I do, Martha?" I ask. But she just shakes her head and disappears into the morning light streaming through the curtains. The morning is gloomy. Heavy clouds hung over Mountain Home, promising rain by noon. I'd been up most of the night, replaying the conversation with Gareth in my head. Something kept me awake, some vague sense of wrongness. He answered too quickly. The story about the canceled dinner sounded too smooth. I get out of bed, feeling my joints aching more than usual. The weather always affects my old body. Every scar, every broken bone reminds me of itself before the rain. Years of working at the sawmill have left their marks. In the kitchen, I brew strong coffee. I look out the window at my backyard. The apple trees are heavy with fruit, and soon it will be time to harvest. Gareth used to help me with that, making cider together, using my father's old recipe. Now I'll have to do it alone, or ask neighbor Dwight for help. I eat a quick breakfast of scrambled eggs and toast, and decide to go into town to get new jigsaw blades. The old ones are dull, and I'm thinking of cutting out a set of chess pieces. Martha always wanted me to make chess pieces, but I kept putting it off. Now that she's gone, it seems like a way to stay connected, to fulfill a promise I made years ago. My old Ford doesn't start the first time. I pat the steering wheel like an old friend. "Come on, old boy, don't let me down." On the third try, the engine comes to life. I drive carefully. At 65, my reactions are not the same, and my eyes see worse. But it's only 15 minutes to the center of Mountain Home, and I know the road like the back of my hand. The main street of the town hasn't changed much in the last 30 years. Same stores, same corner drugstore, same barber shop where I get my hair cut once a month. Only there are a few new establishments, a coffee shop, a trendy boutique, and the same restaurant, Mountain Lake, that Gareth was talking about. I stop at Peterson's hardware store. I pick up not only the saws, but a new pack of sandpaper, a can of wood stain, and a couple of clamps for the workbench. The old ones are all loose and are about to break at the worst possible moment. I'm paying and going outside when I hear a familiar voice. "Erwin Thatcher! I can't believe it!" I turn around and see Frank Weber. We worked together at the sawmill for almost 20 years, until he was transferred to the office. He's retired now too, but he looks younger than his years, trim with a neatly trimmed gray beard. "Frank," I nod, shaking his hand. "It's been a long time." 2 years at least, he agrees, since Betty and I moved closer to my daughter. "How are you? How's Martha?" I lower my eyes. Some news doesn't travel as fast. "Martha died 3 years ago. Cancer." Frank's face changes, and he puts his hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry, man. I didn't know. Betty and I don't get to mountain home much anymore. It's okay. Life goes on. We stand in silence for a while. Then Frank, clearly wanting to change the subject, asks, how's Gareth? Your boy's always been smart. He's okay, I answer briefly. Works at a marketing agency, married. Yeah, I saw him yesterday. With his wife and her parents, I think. At that new restaurant on the corner. I freeze, clutching the shopping bag so tight my knuckles turn white. Yesterday? At Mountain Lake? Yes, Frank nods, not noticing my tension. Betty and I were driving by, and I saw him through the window. I wanted to come in and say hello, but they looked like they were celebrating something. I didn't want to intrude. Something inside me is breaking. Yesterday, at the restaurant, with Meredith's parents. And Gareth told me they weren't flying until Friday, and that Saturday night dinner was canceled. Are you sure it was Gareth? I ask, clutching at the last straw of hope. Frank looks at me with mild surprise. Of course I'm sure. I'm not blind. Your son looks a lot like you when you were young, only without the beard, and the same mole on his right cheek. I nod. The mole is a family trait. My father had one, and me, and Gareth. What time was that? Around 7 in the evening. We were coming back from our daughters and we were driving through downtown. 7 p.m. About an hour after Gareth called me and told me dinner was canceled and his father-in-law and mother-in-law weren't flying in until Friday. Thanks, Frank, I say, trying to make my voice sound normal. It was good to see you. You too, Irwin. Give my regards to Gareth. Tell him old man Weber still remembers him helping us haul logs over summer vacation. We say goodbye and I walk to the car, feeling a cold rage building up inside. All the way home, I grip the steering wheel so tight my fingers go numb. My son, my only son, lied to me, to my face. And not just lied, but made up a whole story to keep me from knowing about a family dinner I didn't want to be at. At home, I throw the shopping bag on the kitchen table and pull out my phone. I dial Gareth's number. Tone 1, 2, 3. It goes straight to voicemail. Gareth, it's Dad. Call me back as soon as you can. I wait half an hour. I call again. Same result. Gareth, it's important. Call me. Another half hour. Nothing. I'm texting. We need to talk. It's urgent. No answer. I know he can see my calls and messages. I know it's a work day and he's always on his phone. But he ignores me. By noon, it starts to rain. First a light drizzle, then a real downpour. I stand at the living room window, watching the streams of water run down the glass. And I remember. 4 years ago, Gareth and Meredith had just bought their first house. Small, but in a nice neighborhood. Gareth called me, his voice shaking with excitement. Dad, we have a problem. The roof is leaking, we need repairs, and we have all the money we need for the down payment. I didn't hesitate for a second. How much do you need? 3,000, maybe a little more. I'll pay you back as soon as I get my bonus. I wired 5 grand, just in case. Gareth's bonus came a month later. I knew it because he bragged about the new car. But he never mentioned the debt. 2 years ago, a call in the middle of the night. Dad, Meredith's in the hospital, appendicitis. Insurance won't cover it, and we're a little strapped for cash right now. $4,000. I'll pay you back as soon as we get back on our feet. 3 months later, Meredith posted photos of their vacation in Hawaii on social media. A well-deserved vacation after illness, she captioned it. Not a word about debt. Last year, Gareth calls, voice low, as if he doesn't want anyone to hear. Dad, we need to replace the water heater right away. The old one's leaking, and it's flooding the downstairs neighbors. We don't have any money to spare, and that's $2,000 at least. I didn't hesitate again. $2,500 went into his account the same day. A week later, photos of their new living room with designer furniture appeared on Meredith's Instagram. Finally updated the interior. Thank you to my favorite husband for spoiling me. Each time I gave the money without too many questions. Each time I believed the promises to pay it back. And each time I've seen that money go to very different things. Not for roof repairs, not for medical bills, not for a water heater. On cars, on vacations, on designer furniture. And now this, lying about the family dinner, about Meredith's parents. The rain is getting heavier, pounding on the roof. I'm still standing at the window when the phone finally rings. Gareth. Hey, Dad. The voice is calm, like nothing's wrong. You rang? Is it something urgent? I take a deep breath, trying to keep my hands from shaking. I ran into Frank Weber in town today. Remember him? You hauled logs together at the sawmill when you were 14. Vaguely, Gareth answers, and I can hear the tension in his voice. So? He saw you at Mountain Lake yesterday, with Meredith and her parents. Silence. A long, heavy silence. Dad, I can explain, Gareth finally says. I'm sure you can, I answer, trying to keep my voice steady. You always have explanations. For everything. For why you don't return the money. For why you don't visit me. And now for why you lied to me about your father-in-law and mother-in-law and family dinner. It's not that simple. No, Gareth, it's very simple. You told me that your father-in-law and mother-in-law were flying in on Friday, that the dinner on Saturday was canceled because of booking problems. They're actually here, and you had dinner at Mountain Lake last night, without me. Look, they flew in earlier than planned, and the dinner was a spontaneous decision. We didn't have time to warn you. Don't lie to me, I say, and my own voice feels foreign. No more lies. You called me yesterday around 6, told me dinner was canceled, and at 7, you were already sitting in the restaurant. We talked for a while longer, but Gareth just twists and turns and makes up new excuses. Finally, I stop this pointless conversation and decide that I have to find out the truth myself. In the evening, I call the Mountain Lake restaurant again. Mountain Lake restaurant, how can I help you? A pleasant female voice answers. Heck, good evening, I say. I was wondering if you have a reservation in Thatcher's name for Saturday? One moment, please, I hear her typing something. Yes, we have a reservation for Saturday, 1900 hours, under the name of Gareth Thatcher. Table for 6. I squeeze the receiver so hard the plastic squeaks. Thank you. Can you tell me if you had a reservation for Thatcher yesterday? Yes, sir. Yesterday at 9 p.m. Table for 6. Also in the name of Gareth Thatcher. And there were no problems with this reservation? No cancellations or postponements? No, sir. Everything went according to plan. Thank you, I say and hang up. Okay, here's the deal. Not just lying about last night's dinner, it's also the plans for Saturday. The same plans that were supposedly canceled because of booking problems. And again, without me. The decision comes suddenly. I have to see everything with my own eyes. I'll be at Mountain Lake at 7 p.m. on Saturday. I'll see who's there. I'll hear what they're talking about. Find out why my son is ashamed to show me to his new family. The rain slowly subsides into a light drizzle. I look out the window at the wet orchard, at the apple trees weighed down by the moisture, and feel the resolve strengthen inside. It's time to know the truth, however bitter it may be. I apologize for my mistake. You're right, I didn't use enough pronouns, which may have made the text feel less natural. Let me rewrite the chapter with a more natural use of pronouns and better first-person narration. Saturday night came unbidden. I spent the entire day in anxious anticipation, glancing at my watch every now and then. Time dragged painfully slow. I occupied myself with small chores around the house, fixing a leaky faucet, trimming the hedge on the porch, even trying to work on chess pieces. But my thoughts kept returning to the evening ahead. At 6 o'clock, I started getting ready. I showered, shaved thoroughly, put on an ironed white shirt and a navy blue suit I hadn't taken out since Martha's funeral. It was a little big. I'd lost weight over the years, but I didn't have anything else. In front of the mirror, I paused in indecision. A tie? Too formal. After all, I wasn't going to an appointment, but to reconnoiter. I shined my old black shoes. The leather was cracked at the folds, but overall they looked decent. I took one last look in the mirror. A graying, wrinkled, but still sturdy man looked back at me with tired eyes. Eyes that had seen a lot, but had never learned to discern people. Not even his own son. At 6:30, I got in my car and drove into town. It was a warm, clear evening, and the roads were almost empty. Many people in Mountain Home on Saturdays go outdoors or stay home. I parked a block away from the restaurant so Gareth wouldn't accidentally notice my car. Mountain Lake was located on the corner of Maple Street and Pine Avenue in an old former bank building. It had been remodeled a year ago, turning it into a trendy establishment with a claim to haute cuisine. Huge floor-to-ceiling windows allowed me to see most of the room from the street. I stopped on the opposite side of the street, pretending to study the window of a bookstore. The entrance to the restaurant was clearly visible from there. It was 15 to 7, 15 minutes before the appointed time. At 5 minutes past 8, I saw Gareth's familiar SUV pull up to the restaurant, a silver Lexus bought last year, ostensibly for traveling to clients, though I suspected it was just a tribute to status. Gareth and Meredith got out of the car, elegant and impeccably dressed as usual. Behind them, another couple, an older man with immaculately styled gray hair and a woman about the same age, wearing a light suit and a pearl necklace. Meredith's parents, I'd only seen them twice, but I recognized them immediately. The four of them entered the restaurant, and I saw the maitre d' greet them, escorting them to a table by the window. A few minutes later, a cab pulled up and another couple got out, a young man who looked like Meredith and a girl with long blonde hair. Meredith's brother, Pierce, and his wife, Jenna. I'd only seen them at a wedding 12 years ago, but I remembered them well. Pierce had been drinking heavily and laughing loudly at his own jokes. 6 people, exactly the number on the reservation, and there was no room for me among them. The father of Gareth, the grandfather of non-existent grandchildren, the man who always came to the rescue when asked. I crossed the street and walked closer to the restaurant, trying to remain unnoticed. I stood so that I couldn't be seen from behind an outdoor cash po with some ornamental plant, but I could observe their table. They were sitting by the window laughing, talking, studying the menu. Gareth was talking animatedly, gesturing, and the others were listening intently. Meredith sat next to him, touching his arm often, as if to emphasize their closeness. Her parents looked content and relaxed. No rush, no tension. Just a family dinner at an expensive restaurant. Family dinner. Without me. The waiter came over and took the order. Soon bottles of wine, white and red, appeared on the table. Gareth's father-in-law said something, raising his glass, and everyone laughed. A toast, apparently. I stood there unmoving, as if glued to the sidewalk. There was a growing pain inside me, a dull, pressing pain, like a heart attack. But it wasn't the heart. It was a soul that couldn't accept betrayal. At that moment, the front door of the restaurant opened, and a middle-aged couple stepped out. I quickly turned to the window of a nearby store, pretending to look at the merchandise on display. As they passed, I looked out the restaurant window again. Another waiter came to the table with a cart of appetizers. He said something, smiling, and pointed to the dishes. Meredith and her mother chose, pointing to different plates. Meredith's brother said something, and everyone laughed again. They looked so happy, so whole. A family. A real family where everyone understands each other, supports each other, appreciates each other. A family where there was no room for an old man with calloused hands and simple manners. I felt a lump come up to my throat. I turned away, took a deep breath. No, I'm not going to cry in the street like an abandoned child. I'm here to find out the truth, and I'm going to find out the truth. With determination, I crossed the street and entered the restaurant. The maitre d', a young man in an austere suit, greeted me with a professional smile. Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation? No, I answered, trying to speak calmly, but I'd like a table for one, if possible. He gave me an appraising look. The old man in the oversized suit was not a typical customer. I'm sorry, sir, but all the tables are taken. You can leave your phone number and we'll call you if anything becomes available. I was about to insist, but at that moment I noticed a small bar in the corner of the room. A bar? Can I sit there? The maitre d' nodded. Yes, it's free. Go ahead. I headed toward the bar, choosing my path so that Gareth and his company wouldn't see me. The bar was at the other end of the room, but I had a good view of their table. I sat down at the bar and ordered a whiskey on the rocks. The bartender, a shaven-headed guy with an intricate tattoo on his wrist, placed a glass in front of me. I took a sip, feeling the liquid burn my throat, and continued watching. They had already started the main course. There were plates of something that looked expensive and exquisite, even from a distance. Meredith was showing something on her phone to her parents, who nodded and smiled. Gareth put his hand on her shoulder, whispered something in her ear. She gave him a warm, intimate smile. I turned away, took another sip of whiskey. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's some explanation for why I wasn't invited. Maybe it wasn't a family dinner, but a business meeting. Though what business could Gareth have with Meredith's parents and brother? More whiskey, sir? The bartender asked, noticing my empty glass. Yes, please. He poured another, and I continued my observation. A waiter came to the table with a new bottle of wine. I saw Gareth pull out his wallet and hand him a map. My card. I recognized the distinctive navy blue design with the bank's silver logo. The credit card I'd given him 2 years ago for emergencies. The whiskey burned my throat, but not as much as the sight burned my soul. They weren't just dining without me. They were doing it on me, using the card I'd entrusted to my son for real emergencies, not lavish dinners with my wife's relatives. I finished my whiskey in a gulp and was about to ask for the bill when I noticed something had changed at the table. They were all looking at Gareth, who, judging by his gesticulations, was telling a story. I strained, trying to hear, but the distance was too great. So I stood up, left the money for my drink, and slowly made my way toward the restroom, which I had noticed earlier was not far from their table. As I passed by, I slowed my step and listened. And imagine he seriously thinks I'm going to give him that money back. Gareth's voice was louder than usual, probably from the wine he'd drunk. I'll pay him back as soon as I get my bonus. And he believes it. The old man is so naive that it's even funny. Everyone at the table laughed. I froze in place, not believing my ears. Gareth, you're awful, Meredith said, but there was no reproach in her voice, more admiration. But you have to admit it's your father's fault. He's literally forcing his help on us. No. How often have you heard him say, "Do you need money, son?" For God's sake. Gareth mimicked my voice, making it deliberately rude and simple, as if money was the only way he could be useful. Well, to be honest, he doesn't have many other ways, Pierce said, raising his glass. I can't imagine what I'd talk about with a man who spent his life sawing trees. There was laughter again. I stood thunderstruck, unable to move. Do you remember when he came to our wedding in that awful suit? Meredith continued. Mom almost fainted. Oh yeah, said her mother, Vanessa. I wondered where he'd gotten that. It's like it's from the 80s. It was his going out suit, Gareth said, and I heard a note of condescension in his voice that I'd never noticed before. He wore it to all the big events in his life, his wedding, my graduation, my mom's funeral. How sweet, Vanessa said with obvious irony. But seriously, darling, have you thought about giving him a hint that it's time to update his closet if he insists on going out in public? What's the point? Gareth dismissed him. He spends most of his time in his hovel on the hill anyway, austere woodsman. Fortunately, hardly anyone sees him. Shack. My house that I built with my own hands, that I raised him in, that I lived in with Martha for 30 happy years, he called a shack. And thank God for that, Quentin Meredith's father said. I can imagine what the club would say if I introduced him as a relative. An economics professor, father-in-law of a carpenter with an 8th grade education? No, thank you. Well, technically he was a sawmill worker, not a carpenter, Gareth pointed out, but without much enthusiasm, as if he didn't care. It doesn't matter, Quentin dismissed him. The main thing is that he doesn't show up at our meetings. I still remember him trying to make a conversation about baseball at your wedding. Baseball, like it was a topic for polite society. Another burst of laughter. I stood there, clenching my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. Every word hit me like a punch in the gut. And the way he eats! Vanessa wouldn't stop. Remember that dinner after Martha's funeral? I thought I was going to die of shame when he started cutting the lettuce with a knife. Mom, don't be such a snob, Meredith said, but you could hear the laughter in her voice. After all, he grew up in a different time, in a different environment, and he's really trying. Oh yes, he does try, Gareth agreed, especially when it comes to his wallet. You wouldn't believe it, but he just wired me $1,000 for the mortgage payment, and we're using it to pay for dinner tonight. He raised his glass. To the generosity of my father, who doesn't even realize how much he's helping us. Everyone raised their glasses laughing, and I stood there, unable to believe what I was hearing. My son. My only son wasn't just lying to me, wasn't just using me for money. He was laughing at me. They all did. Sir, are you all right? A passing waiter asked, noticing me frozen in the middle of the room. I flinched, coming to my senses. Yeah, I'm fine, just thinking. The restrooms are that way, he pointed in the direction. Thank you. I moved in that direction, trying not to look at Gareth's table. In the restroom, I went to the sink and turned on the cold water. Splashed it in my face, looking at my reflection in the mirror. The old man with reddened eyes looked at me with a mute question. How could you be so wrong about your own son? Water dripped from my chin, leaving dark stains on my shirt. I didn't pay attention. My mind was reeling with their words, their laughter, their toasts at my expense. At the expense of a naive old man who blindly trusted his son. I wiped my face with a paper towel and left the bathroom. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw that Gareth's table was just serving dessert, some elaborate cakes and ice cream. They were still laughing and talking, but I didn't want to hear another word. I headed for the exit, trying to stay away from their table. At the door, I turned around one last time. They looked so happy, so content with life. A family. A real family where everyone understands each other, supports each other, appreciates each other. A family that is built on lies, ridicule, and other people's money. I went outside, breathed in the fresh evening air. I felt dizzy, whether from the whiskey or from realizing the magnitude of the betrayal. I walked slowly to my car, not noticing the passers-by, not seeing the shop windows, not hearing the noise of the city. In the car, I got behind the wheel, but I didn't start the engine. I just sat there staring at nothing, trying to comprehend everything I had learned. My son, my flesh and blood, the man I raised, the man I gave everything I had, time, effort, money, love. He despises me, makes fun of me, uses me, and his wife, a woman I've welcomed into the family, to whom I've never done anything wrong. She despises me too, ashamed of me, thinks me unworthy of her society, and her parents, people I've only seen a couple times in my life, who know nothing about me. They laugh at me too. My education, my job, my manners, my house. All this time I thought I was helping my son, that I was supporting him in his time of need, that I was doing what a father should do. But in reality, I was just an ATM machine, a source of money for their lavish lives, their expensive dinners, their ostentatious well-being. I started the car and slowly pulled onto the road. I drove carefully. My head was buzzing from the whiskey I had drunk and the storm of emotions. On the way home, I stopped at an observation deck that overlooked the mountain home at night. The lights of the city twinkled below like stars that had fallen to earth. I had once loved this town. It's where I grew up, met Martha, built a house, raised a son. My whole life has been here. An honest, hard-working, simple life. I never sought luxury, never chased status. I just wanted my family to be happy and not to need anything. And this is how it turned out. A son who despises me, a daughter-in-law who is ashamed of me, their in-laws who laugh at me. A heaviness was building in my chest, not pain, but something deeper, darker. Resentment, anger, disappointment, all together, and something else I couldn't find a name for. I sat like that for a long time, staring at the lights of the city until I began to freeze. Then I drove home, to my shack on the hill, as Gareth put it. The house greeted me with silence and darkness. I turned on the light in the hallway, took off my jacket, hung it on the coat rack. I went into the kitchen, got a bottle of whiskey and a glass from the cupboard, poured it, drank it in one gulp, poured another. He sat at the table, looking out the window at the dark orchard. The apple trees were black against the starry sky, like silent guards. What now? What do I do with this knowledge? With this pain? With this betrayal? My first thought was to call Gareth, to tell him what I thought, to denounce his lies, his betrayal, his mockery. But what good would that do? He'd deny it. He'd deny it. He'd make up new excuses. Or worse, he'll admit it and say he doesn't care. No, there's no point in calling. Just like there's no point in waiting for him to come to his senses, to understand, to repent. That Gareth I saw in the restaurant today was not the boy I'd raised. He was a stranger, selfish, deceitful, calculating. And I couldn't just swallow that resentment, pretend it didn't happen, keep giving him money and believing his lies. No, something had to change, something drastic. Revenge? I've never been a vengeful person. Martha always said I was too straightforward, too honest for my own good. But now, sitting in the dark kitchen, feeling the whiskey burning my throat, for the first time in my life, I truly wanted revenge. Not just to say what I thought, not just stop giving them money. No, I wanted them to feel what I was feeling right now. Humiliation, pain, betrayal. I wanted them to realize that I wasn't some naive old man who could be fooled forever, that I have pride, that I have dignity, and that betrayal comes with a price. I finished my whiskey and went into my office. I turned on my computer, opened my bank's website. I logged into my account, found the credit card management section, hovered over the block card button next to Gareth's name, but didn't click it. No, that would be too easy, too predictable. I wanted something more, something they would remember for a long time. I closed the bank's website and opened the phone book. I scrolled down to the letter P. Prescott, Lloyd, an old friend of mine who now works for the IRS, the same one who always said Gareth was using me. I picked up the phone and dialed the number. Tone 123. Lloyd Prescott here, came a familiar, gruff voice. Lloyd, it's Irvin. Sorry for the late call. Irwin, what's wrong? Are you okay? No, I answered honestly. I'm not okay. I need your help. I woke up at first light, my head throbbing from last night's whiskey. But the pain of betraying my son was far worse than the hangover. The memories of what I'd heard in the restaurant stung my soul like acid. My own son, my Gareth, the man I'd lived for all these years after Martha's death. He laughed at me, used me, despised me. I got up, took a shower, drank a strong coffee with a painkiller. My head cleared, but it didn't feel any better. I had to act, decisively and without hesitation. The clock read 9 a.m. when I dialed Lloyd Prescott's number. We'd been friends with Lloyd for almost 40 years, since he'd come to work at the sawmill. We were barracks neighbors in the early years. Then we played on the local baseball team together, fished together on weekends. Lloyd was best man at my wedding to Martha, and I was best man at his wedding to Ellen. Our paths parted when he decided to change careers, leaving the sawmill for the IRS. He learned to be an accountant, got a position, and gradually rose to senior inspector. But we remained friends, those rare friends who may not see each other for months, but then meet and talk as if we had parted yesterday. Lloyd picked up the phone after the second ring. Lloyd Prescott speaking. Lloyd, it's Irwin. I hope I didn't wake you. Irwin! His voice warmed immediately. Are you kidding me? I've been getting up at 5:30 every day since I went to work. Old habits, you know. Glad to hear from you, friend. You too, I said, but my voice trembled. Lloyd noticed it right away. He'd always been sensitive to other people's moods. Is something wrong? You're not okay. Yeah, I didn't deny it. I'm not okay. You were right about Gareth. Right all along. Lloyd was silent for a second, and then he asked quietly, what did he do? And I told him. Everything. The lies about the dinner, the way I'd followed them, the conversation I'd overheard, the credit card Gareth had used to pay for the dinner, about the ridicule, about the scorn, about the betrayal. Lloyd listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was silent for a long time, and then he swore, short and succinct, as we used to do on the sawmill. I told you, he said at last. I told you so many times. The boy's using you. I know, I agreed. You told me. I didn't listen. Of course you didn't listen. He's your son. Every father wants to believe in the best. I sighed, looking out the window at my garden, at the apple trees I'd once planted with Gareth. Remember when I came to see you 3 years ago? After I gave him the money to fix the roof? I remember, Lloyd answered. You said he bought a new car a month after that, and we had a bet. Yeah, we had a big argument. Lloyd told me straight out that Gareth was lying to me. There was no roof, he just needed the money for the down payment on the car. And I defended my son, saying that maybe he'd gotten a bonus or something, and he'd repaired the roof too. We almost had a fight. Lloyd insisted I check, asked for receipts. Receipts. And I said no. I told him I trusted my son. You were right, I said again. You were right all along, about the roof and the health insurance and the water heater. Everything went to their lavish life, the cars, the vacations, the restaurants. Irwin, Lloyd's voice became serious. What are you going to do? I've already thought about it all night long, tossing and turning without sleep. I want him to learn a lesson, a real lesson. Not just stop giving him money. That's too easy. I want him to learn that betrayal comes with a price. That sounds serious, Lloyd said. What exactly are you up to? I don't know yet. I'm counting on your help. You've always been smarter than me about these things. Lloyd chuckled. Not smarter, just less trusting. Look, let's meet. You don't discuss things like this over the phone. We agreed to meet in an hour at Donna's, a small place on the outskirts of Mountain Home that served the best pancakes around. The place wasn't chosen at random. It was rare for Gareth or Meredith to be there, too basic for their refined tastes. I arrived first, ordered a coffee, and sat by the window. Lloyd showed up 10 minutes later, trim, gray-haired, with a straight back and a keen eye. His years at the IRS had taught him to see through people. I wish I'd picked up that skill. Irwin, he shook my hand firmly and sat down across from me. You look lousy. It was a rough night, I admitted. I bet it was, finding that out. He shook his head. Did you order yet? Just coffee. Lloyd called the waitress, a young girl with freckles, and ordered pancakes with maple syrup for both of them. When she stepped away, he leaned toward me and said quietly, I've been thinking about your situation all the way over here, and I think I have an idea. But before I share it, be honest. Do you really want to teach him a lesson? A real lesson he won't forget? Or just to blow off steam? I looked my old friend in the eye. A real lesson. I've been a naive fool for too long. Time to call it quits. Lloyd nodded. Good, then listen up. In 20 years in the IRS, I've seen a lot of scams. And one of the most common is when kids write off the cost of taking care of their elderly parents. You know what I mean? I shook my head. Not really. There is a tax deduction for the cost of caring for incapacitated relatives. If you spend money on medical treatment, care, special equipment for your parents, you can get a deduction. And some people go further. They itemize fictitious expenses that didn't really happen. I was starting to see where he was going with this. Do you think, Gareth? I don't think, Lloyd interrupted. I know. Remember a year ago when you said he asked you to sign some papers for the IRS? Something to do with your health care? I remember. Gareth brought some forms, said they were for his accounting department, something to do with family health insurance. I signed it without reading it. I trusted my son. Yeah, I did. I'll bet your son puts your medical expenses on his tax return. Thousands of dollars a year for medication, medical equipment, caregivers, special meals. All things that didn't really exist. I felt the blood rush to my face. But it's fraud. Exactly, Lloyd nodded. Tax fraud. You know how the IRS treats fraud? They brought pancakes, but I could barely think about food. The thought of Gareth not only using me to get money, but defrauding the state with my name was unbearable. What do you suggest? I asked when the waitress left. First, immediately block all credit cards to which he has access. Second, check all bank transfers over the past years. Amounts, dates, purpose of payment. Third, write a formal statement to the IRS stating that you never received financial assistance from your son, never needed special care, and never signed a consent form to use your name on his tax returns. So what's going to happen? A tax audit? Lloyd cut off a piece of pancake and sent it to his mouth. The most thorough. All bank accounts, all returns for the last 6 years, all transactions. And if what I'm suggesting checks out, and I'm pretty sure it will, your son and his wife are looking at a hefty fine, possibly even criminal charges, although it doesn't usually come to that on a first offense. I envisioned it. Tax inspectors at Gareth's house, an audit of all the paperwork, questions about fictitious expenses, fines, possibly trouble at work. That's tough, I finally said. Isn't what he did to you tough? Lloyd put his fork down. Irvin, that guy didn't just take money from you. He made fun of you. He used your name for tax fraud. He betrayed your trust in every way imaginable. And you want to teach him a lesson, right? A real lesson? Right, I nodded. Then this is the best way. Believe me, nothing scares people like your son, like getting in trouble with the IRS. For them, it's like the end of the world, a threat to their respectability, their status, their reputation. I was silent, pondering his words. The plan was good, fair, legal, effective. Not just revenge, but restorative justice. Garrett deserved a lesson. All right, I said at last. Let's do it. Where do we start? The bank, Lloyd answered. Call right now and block all the cards he has access to. I pulled out my phone and dialed the bank's number. After a few minutes of waiting and confirming my identity, a counselor answered. What can I do for you, Mr. Thatcher? I want to block my credit card, I said. The one in the name of my son, Gareth Thatcher. Sure. May I ask why it's being blocked? I looked at Lloyd and he said with one lip, lost. The card is lost, I said. Probably stolen. I see. I'll need to ask a few questions to confirm your identity. After confirmation, the counselor blocked the card and offered to issue a new one. No, thank you, I declined. There's no need for that yet. When I finished talking, Lloyd nodded approvingly. Good. Now he can't use your card anymore. And when he tries and gets rejected, it'll be interesting to see how he reacts. He'll probably call me with questions. What are you going to say? I'm thinking. The truth. What I know about the restaurant, about how they laughed at me, about how he used my card. Lloyd shook his head. No, that won't work. If you tell him now, he'll have time to prepare for a tax audit. Maybe even fake some paperwork retroactively. No, it's better to tell him you found strange transactions on your card and blocked it for security reasons, that you're dealing with the bank. Nothing concrete. Cheating. That's not my style, I admitted. And being used and ridiculed is, Lloyd countered. Erwin, it's not deception. It's strategy. If you want a plan to work, you have to act in cold blood. I understood his logic, but I still felt uncomfortable. All my life I've been a straightforward person. If something was wrong, I'd say so openly. The very idea of pretending, sneaking around, understatement, was repugnant to my nature. But on the other hand, didn't Gareth deserve the same treatment he'd given me? Wasn't it fair that I was always honest with him, and he lied to my face? All right, I finally agreed. Siwin will do it your way. Lloyd finished his coffee and looked at his watch. Great. Now the next step is paperwork. We need to prepare an application to the IRS. I can help with the wording. I know how to get it right. You're not scared? I mean, you work for the IRS. If someone finds out you're helping, I'm not doing anything illegal, Lloyd interrupted. On the contrary, I'm helping to detect fraud. That's my job, actually. We paid and left the cafe. It was a clear, sunny day, but I felt cold inside. All of this, blocking the card, preparing the paperwork, planning the tax audit, seemed surreal, as if it wasn't happening to me. Let's go to my place, Lloyd suggested. I have all the necessary forms, and I'll show you how to fill them out correctly. We got in my car and drove to his place. Lloyd lived in a small but well-kept house on the outskirts of town. Clean, neat, just like himself. His wife Ellen had died 5 years before. Cancer, like Martha. Maybe that's why we remained close all these years. Two widowers who understood each other's pain without words. We spent the next 2 hours in Lloyd's office, filled with bookcases of legal and financial literature. He showed me forms, explained what to write, what evidence to provide. You'll need to submit all your bank statements for the last few years, he said, filling out some form, to prove that the money moved from you to him, not the other way around, as he probably indicated in his declarations. I have all the statements, I nodded. I keep them in a separate folder. Good. You'll also need medical records to prove that you didn't need the special care he was supposedly paying for. That won't be a problem either. I get a physical every year, and the doctor always says I'm in great shape for my age. Lloyd grinned. You should be. I've been doing physical labor all my life, outdoors. Not like those office rats who, at 30, have shortness of breath. I smiled involuntarily. Lloyd always had a way of cheering me up, even in the darkest of situations. You know, I said, watching him fill out another form in his neat handwriting, I still can't believe we're doing this. That I'm doing this, going against my own son. Lloyd looked up from the papers. You're not going against him. You're bringing justice. There's a difference. Maybe, I sighed, something in him, but it doesn't make it any easier. Erwin, Lloyd put the pen away. I know this is hard. Hell, I'd probably feel the same way if I were you. But think about this. You're not doing this out of revenge. You're doing this because your son needs to realize that his actions have consequences, that you can't take advantage of people with impunity, especially people who love you. It's not revenge, it's a lesson. Harsh, yes, but necessary. I nodded, realizing he was right. If this had been about someone else, I wouldn't have hesitated for a second. But this was my son, my blood, the man I'd raised, the man I'd given a part of my life, my soul to. And what if he didn't learn his lesson? I asked. What if it only gets worse? Then at least you'll know you did your best, Lloyd replied. And you'll be able to move on with a clear conscience, knowing that you didn't let yourself be used for the rest of your life. We continued working on the documents. Lloyd was pedantic and meticulous. Every figure, every date had to be exact. No mistakes, no inaccuracies. The IRS doesn't like sloppiness, he explained. If anything is wrong, they can reject the application. By 4 p.m., everything was ready. The tax fraud claim, attachments with dates and amounts of transfers, copies of bank statements we'd printed from my online account. That's it, Lloyd said, putting the papers in a neat stack. You can take these to the IRS tomorrow. I do it myself, but it's better if you do it in person. I understand, I nodded. Thanks for your help, Lloyd. I don't know what I would have done without you. That's what friends are for. He patted me on the shoulder. Now, why don't we get a drink? After all this work, we could both use one. I agreed, though I still felt heavy inside. Lloyd pulled out a bottle of good whiskey, not the cheap stuff we drank when we were young, but something aged, expensive. He poured it into 2 glasses and handed one to me. To justice, he said, raising his own. Shiani and Mods. To justice, I echoed. We drank. The whiskey was good soft, with a hint of smoke and honey. Not what I was used to, but nice. You know, Lloyd said after the second drink, I've always envied you. Me? I wondered. What's there to envy? You had a son, a continuation of you, your blood, your name. Ellen and I failed. No matter how hard we tried, it didn't work. I never thought about it. Lloyd never talked about kids, and I assumed he and Ellen just didn't want them. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Come on, he said with a wave of his hand. It's in the past. It's just, sometimes fate plays tricks on you, doesn't it? Gave you a son who betrayed you? She didn't give me one at all. We were silent for a while, thinking about our own things. Then Lloyd poured another glass. Tomorrow's going to be a tough day, he said. When you get the papers in, it's going to be a process that can't be stopped. Are you ready for that? I wondered. Was I ready? Ready to go against my own son, to put him at risk of fines, maybe even criminal prosecution? Ready to destroy our relationship, perhaps forever? Yes, I finally answered. I am, because the alternative is worse, to continue to live in deception, to be used, to be ridiculed. That's not living. That's existence. Lloyd nodded. I'd do the same thing if I were you. As I was about to leave, my phone rang. Gareth's name popped up on the screen. Lloyd and I looked at each other. He must have tried to use the card already, he said. Remember, it's nothing specific. It's just a security problem, and you're dealing with the bank. I nodded and answered the phone. Hi, Gareth. Dad? My son sounded annoyed. Did you do anything with the credit card? It's not working. Yeah, I answered, trying to speak calmly. I blocked it. There were some strange transactions, and the bank is looking into it. What kind of transactions? Why didn't you warn me? It all happened suddenly. I just found out today. When will it be unlocked? Gareth sounded impatient. I have something important to pay for. I looked at Lloyd, who was silently articulating, Don't tell me. I don't know, I said. The bank promised to sort it out in the next few days. What's so urgent you need to pay? Oh, nothing much, Gareth answered quickly. I wanted to order a present for Meredith. Her birthday's coming up. Lies, another lie. Meredith's birthday was in January, 5 months from now. I see, I said. Well, we'll have to wait or use your card. Not good for this particular site, Gareth replied uncertainly. Okay, whatever. Keep me posted on the unlocking, okay? Sure. We said goodbye and I hung up. Lloyd looked at me questioningly. How'd it go? I lied about Meredith's birthday, I said. He said he wanted to buy her a present, but her birthday isn't for another 5 months. See? Lloyd shook his head. Lie after lie. Even now, when he's in a panic over the map, The first thing that comes to his mind is another lie. I nodded, feeling the resolve strengthen inside. Yes, I'm doing the right thing. Harsh, perhaps, but fair. See you tomorrow, Lloyd, I said, shaking my friend's hand. Thanks for everything. Friday morning was sunny and cool. I got up at first light, even though I hadn't slept much the night before. Today was the day everything was going to be resolved, the day of reckoning. After my visit to the tax office with the documents prepared with Lloyd's help, events had moved swiftly. The inspectors, having seen the evidence of possible fraud, took the matter seriously, especially when it was discovered that Gareth had listed my care expenses on his returns as $12,000 annually, money I had never seen. The investigation took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of scrutinizing bank accounts, tax returns, medical records, and every day the picture became clearer. Garrett and Meredith had been defrauding not only me, but the state for years. Lloyd, as promised, helped me every step of the way. His experience in the IRS was invaluable. He knew all the procedures, all the nuances, all the pitfalls. Thanks to him, the process went quickly and smoothly. And then, 3 days ago, something unexpected happened. Lloyd called me in the evening, his voice sounding excited. "Irvin, you're not going to believe this. I just got off the phone with Jim Harrison from Investigations. They found out that Gareth wasn't just writing off taxes to fake care for you. He was also taking out loans in your name." What? I couldn't believe my ears. How is that possible? Remember those papers he asked you to sign a year ago? That wasn't just a tax form. It was a power of attorney that authorized him to make financial transactions on your behalf. I sat up, feeling my legs wobbling. Power of attorney. My own son had tricked me into signing a power of attorney to take out loans in my name. How much? I asked, afraid to hear the answer. According to preliminary data, about $30,000. 3 separate loans, all made last year. The payments come out of your account, automatic debits. I remembered how Gareth had insisted I set up auto payments for convenience. Said that way I'd never miss a bill payment. And in reality, it's not just tax fraud anymore, Irwin, Lloyd continued. It's a felony. Fraud, forgery, illegal use of personal information. Jim says they've already contacted the police. The police? I felt a chill go down my spine. It's one thing to have a tax audit and fines. It's quite another to have a criminal case, police, maybe even jail time. Yeah, but don't worry, they're not going to bust into his house with a warrant. It's going to be, delicate. And now, on this sunny Friday morning, I was preparing for the final act of the drama. Lloyd had called last night to let me know everything was ready. Tax inspectors, police officers, all the necessary paperwork. All I had to do was pick a place and time. I chose Mountain Lake, the same restaurant where 2 weeks ago I overheard my son and his family laughing at me. And 8 p.m., a time when the restaurant is usually full of people. Perhaps it was petty of me. Perhaps I could have chosen a more private place, spared Gareth the public humiliation. But I remembered how they'd made fun of my suit, my manners, my house. How they called me a naive old man, easily fooled, and decided that publicity was part of the lesson they needed to learn. I called Gareth yesterday, invited him to dinner at Mountain Lake, said I wanted to apologize for the credit card misunderstanding, that it had been resolved, and I wanted to celebrate at a nice restaurant. His surprise was almost palpable. You? At Mountain Lake? There was disbelief in his voice. Dad, that's a pretty expensive place. I know, I answered. But sometimes you can't afford it, especially in honor of a reconciliation. Invite Meredith. I've made reservations for 3. Gareth agreed, though he sounded wary. I didn't bother to tell him that the reservation was for 6:30 for us and 3 for special guests. I spent the rest of the day at home, preparing myself mentally. I changed clothes several times, not knowing what to wear to such a restaurant. In the end, I decided on the same suit I wore last time. Dark blue, a little too big. Let them see me as I am, a simple man without pretensions. At 7:30, I arrived at the restaurant. Lloyd was waiting for me on the corner, as agreed. Nervous? He asked, shaking my hand. A little, I admitted. Is everything ready? Everything's on schedule. Jim and his colleague are already inside at the next table. Officers Burke and Mallory will be arriving at 8:05. We'll give you a little time to talk before they show up. I nodded, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. Not from fear, from anticipation. Anticipation of the moment when the mask would be ripped off, when the truth would come out. Are you sure you want to do this? Lloyd asked, looking me carefully in the eye. So, it's not too late to call the whole thing off. I shook my head. Known bitte. I want them to learn that you can't use people with impunity. Even if those people are your family, especially if they are your family. Lloyd nodded and patted my shoulder. Then let's go. I'll see you inside. He left and I waited for Gareth and Meredith. They showed up at 8 sharp, punctual as always. Gareth in a stylish gray suit, Meredith in an elegant black dress. So beautiful, so successful, so fake. Dad! Gareth waved at me, coming closer. You're early. I didn't want to be late, I said, hugging him. It was a hard hug, the first time I'd ever hugged my son with cold calculation rather than love. Minus Mr. Thatcher? Meredith smiled tautly and kissed my cheek. It's good to see you. Shenanorum. You too, Meredith, I lied. Shall we go inside? Our table should be ready. We entered the restaurant. The maitre d', the same young man as last time, greeted us with a professional smile. Good evening. Do you have a reservation? Yes, under Thatcher's name, I replied. A table for 6. Gareth gave me a surprised look. 6? Dad, did you invite anyone else? You'll see, I said calmly. It's a surprise. The maitre d' took us to a table in the center of the room, a large round one perfectly visible from all sides. It was exactly what I'd asked for when I'd made the reservation. We sat down, Gareth and Meredith across from me. I noticed them exchange quick glances, wary, perplexed. Good, let them be nervous. So, Dad, Gareth began after we'd ordered our drinks, you said you wanted to celebrate the resolution of the credit card problem? Yes, I nodded. The problem has indeed been solved, but not in the way you think. What do you mean? His smile became strained. I looked at my watch. 8:03. Almost time. Gareth, I know everything. I know about that dinner 2 weeks ago when you and Meredith's family made fun of me. I know you used my credit card to pay for it. I know that you've been listing fictitious expenses for my care on your tax returns for years. And I know about the loans you took out in my name by forging my signature. Gareth's face changed. First surprise, then fear, then an attempt to pull himself together. Dad, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. I raised my voice and several people at neighboring tables turned around. No more lies, I heard you. I was here, in this very restaurant, when you were telling me how ridiculous it was that I believed your promises to give me my money back. When Meredith talked about my awful suit at your wedding. When her father called me an 8th-grade educated carpenter. Meredith turned pale. Her fingers, clutching the napkin, turned white with tension. Minus Mr. Thatcher, you've got it all wrong. No, Meredith, I got it right. For the first time in years, I see the situation for what it really is. You and Gareth have been using me. You took my money, you laughed behind my back, you lied to me. And not just me, you cheated the government by listing expenses on your tax returns that never happened. At that moment, I noticed 4 men heading toward our table. Lloyd, Jim Harrison from the IRS, and 2 plainclothes police officers. Gareth noticed them too and tensed up. Dad, what's going on? Who are these people? Your payback, son, I said quietly, for everything you've done. Lloyd came up first and stood beside me. Jim Harrison, a tall, thin man with a folder of documents, stopped by the desk and introduced himself. Mr. Gareth Thatcher, I'm James Harrison, Superintendent of the Internal Revenue Service. And these are Officers Burke and Mallory of the Mountain Home Police Department. Gareth's face turned ash gray. Meredith looked like she was about to pass out. What does all this mean? Gareth muttered. It means you're under investigation for tax fraud, forgery, and unauthorized use of personal information, Harrison replied, opening the folder. We have evidence that you've reported on your tax returns fictitious expenses for your father's care in the amount of $12,000 annually for the last 5 years, and that you, using a false power of attorney, made 3 loans in your father's name totaling $30,000. The restaurant fell silent. Everyone present, waiters, customers, even the maitre d' at the entrance, froze watching the drama unfold. I noticed a woman at a neighboring table pull out her phone and start filming. "There's been some kind of mistake," Gareth said, looking around for a way out. "I can explain." "You'll explain at the station," said Officer Burke, a sturdily built man with a military bearing, minus Mr. Gareth Thatcher. "You are being held on suspicion of fraud and forgery. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As the officer read the rights, I watched my son's face. He was changing emotions: shock, disbelief, fear, anger. Finally, he turned to me, and in his eyes I saw something I'd never noticed before: cold hatred. "You," he hissed, "you did this. You denounced your own son." "No, Gareth," I shook my head. "You betrayed your father. You lied to me for years. You laughed at me behind my back. You used me as an ATM machine. You forged my signature to take out loans in my name. So which one of us is the traitor?" Meredith burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. Officer Mallory, the only woman in the group, walked over to her and said quietly, "Mrs. Thatcher, you're going to have to come with us too. You're listed as a co-conspirator on the tax returns." "No," Meredith sobbed. "It was Gareth. I didn't know anything about the loans, I swear." Gareth looked at her in amazement. "Meredith, you're the one who suggested I put my father's expenses on the tax return. You said no one checks these things." "That's not true." She raised her voice, no longer caring who heard them. "It was your idea. You said everyone does it." I watched them shift the blame onto each other, and I felt a strange desolation. No, not the satisfaction I was expecting. Not justice, just emptiness. Like something important, something vital had been ripped from my soul. The officers led Gareth and Meredith out of the restaurant, accompanied by whispers and stares from the customers. Jim Harrison lingered to go over some details with me. "Minus Mr. Thatcher, you will need to appear at the IRS on Monday for a formal deposition, and possibly later in court, if it comes to that." "Will it come to that?" I asked. Harrison shrugged. "It's hard to say. In cases like this, it's common to cut a deal with the prosecution. Considering that this is a first offense, and with full restitution, your son could get off with a large fine and probation. But that's not for me to decide." When he left, Lloyd and I were alone at the table. The restaurant was slowly returning to normal, though many of the customers were still casting curious glances in our direction. "This is it," Lloyd said, looking at me carefully. "Are you okay?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I thought I was going to feel something else. Satisfaction? Joy? Triumph? Yeah, something like that. Instead, it's just, emptiness." Lloyd nodded understandingly. "It's normal, Irwin. You've just severed your last ties with your son. Perhaps forever. It can't help but leave a void." I sighed, looking around the restaurant. Expensive tablecloths, crystal glasses, waiters in perfectly ironed shirts. A place where I didn't feel like I belonged. A place where my family had laughed at me 2 weeks ago. "Let's get out of here," I said, standing up. "I want a drink." "But not here." We paid for the drinks we hadn't even had time to drink and went outside. It was a warm, starry evening. We walked in silence to the Old Pine, the bar where we often met when we were young. Not much had changed there over the years. The same wooden tables, the same shabby counter, the same smell of beer and roasted nuts. We got a beer each and sat in the corner, away from the TV which was showing a sports game. "You know," Lloyd said after the first sip, "when Ellen died, I thought I'd never recover, that the emptiness inside would grow until it swallowed me whole." I nodded. "I felt the same way after Martha died. But then I realized one thing," he continued. "Emptiness isn't the absence of something. It's a space for something new, like a field that's been cleared of the old crop. Yes, there's nothing there now, but that doesn't mean nothing will grow in the future." I looked at my old friend with gratitude. Lloyd always knew how to find the right words. "Do you think I could, start over? At my age?" "Why not?" He shrugged. "You're healthy. You have a house, a pension, hands that can still make beautiful things. You have everything you need for a new life. Except a family, I sighed. Erwin, Lloyd put his hand on my shoulder. Family isn't necessarily those who are related to you by blood. Family is those who are there for you when you need them. Those who accept you for who you are. The ones who don't laugh behind your back. I knew he was right. I always knew it, deep down inside. But now, after everything that's happened, it's especially clear. Thank you, Lloyd, I said, raising my glass, for being a true friend, for being my real family. We clinked glasses and drank. The bitter beer washed away some of the emptiness inside, leaving room for something new. For hope, maybe. For a chance to start over. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know how Gareth's case would end, if I'd ever see him again. I didn't know how my life would turn out now that the last link to the past had been severed. But one thing I knew for sure was that I would no longer live a lie. I would not allow myself to be used. I would not turn a blind eye to betrayal, even if it came from those closest to me. And maybe that was the real payback, not the public humiliation of Gareth and Meredith, not a police investigation, not a possible trial, but my own liberation from illusions, from false loyalties, from the blind parental love that had forced me to endure humiliation and deceit. Lloyd and I sat in the bar until closing time, reminiscing about our youth, discussing plans for the future. He invited me on a fishing trip the following weekend, to the same lake where we had once fished for trout with Gareth. I agreed, feeling something new slowly but surely growing inside, something akin to peace. Returning home late that night, I looked up at the starry sky and thought about Martha. What would she say when she found out what I'd done? Would she approve or disapprove? I would never know for sure, but I wanted to believe that she would understand, that she, like me, would have chosen the truth, no matter how bitter it was. My house, the shack on the hill, as Gareth called it, welcomed me with silence and coolness. I turned on the light in the hallway, hung my jacket on the hook, and walked into the kitchen. I poured a glass of water and went to the window. There in the darkness of the garden, blackened silhouettes of apple trees, which we once planted together with my son. Soon it would be time to harvest. This year I'll have to do it alone or ask my neighbor for help. But that's okay. I'll manage. I always have. And I can do it now.